Hi, everybody. Welcome to 12,000 Feet and Live at 5. Beginning of a new week, January 18th, 6th of Shvat, and we are very delighted to have some folks with us joining us for the first time. And frankly, to be for the first time, this should be episode number 1, where Live at 5 finally makes its way to the Jewish Experiences YouTube channel, which is kind of a surprising and delayed thing. We have lived for a long time just on Facebook Live, but there are lots of folks who are not Facebook fans, never will be, never were, and they could see it other places. If you're on Facebook Live, continue to join us here. We'll still be publishing to Facebook Live. That's the plan. But we can also be on YouTube, and everyone is always encouraged to join us backstage, where Live at 5 really is live on Zoom, Monday through Thursdays at 5 p.m. And you need the Zoom address 694-348-057. After 150 plus episodes, I have actually memorized it. I think I got it wrong for about the first 132. We are delighted to have you like this week's background. This is Loveland Pass, a photo that was taken by one of my house guests over the weekend. I'll get back to them in a minute, but it's a beautiful picture of sunset in a snowy day at Loveland Pass. So I'm going to mention, I just want to start off with a few announcements. And actually, I some tragedies, unfortunately. We're going to send our condolences. There was one last week which I missed, which I was reminded, and I want to mention a fellow in our community whose name was Chuck Ezralu, and lived here for many years. He told me many times that his Rebbe was Rabbi Shlomo Tursky, Shlomo Tursky, who was the father of Mati Tursky. I never met Rav Shlomo Tursky, but I knew his son very well. Know his son well. Should live and be well. And Chuck was one of those people who's lived here for a long time and is just really inspired by the Turskys, who are really a very influential, positive, uplifting, spiritual force of guidance in Denver. And I moved to town 18 years ago, right when Reb Moti Tursky, Reb Shlomo's son, moved to New York. So I missed living together in Denver with him, but since he would return frequently, we've gotten to know each other, and he really is very wonderful. And I actually studied with his son in Israel, actually, his one son, Shimi Tursky, who we studied together. But my announcement was about the tragic and sad passing of Chuck Israel of blessed memory, and that was last week's announcement, which I neglected. Unfortunately, we have some more sad news to announce this week as well. There was a very lovely matriarch or matron of our community for many years, Hermine Blau of blessed memory, who passed on Shabbos, and her funeral was yesterday. And I'll tell you just one quick thing about her. She and her husband, Yibodel L'chaim Tovim, he should live and be well, George, they made an annual practice for many years. Every year at Purim time, they would go to my kids' school, Hillel Academy, with a thick stack of $2 bills, and they would walk around classroom to classroom, kid to kid, and they would give every kid a $2 bill. That was like the neatest thing. The kids would love that. $2 bill is anyway kind of weird and neat, and when somebody hands you any kind of a bill of dollars, it's good. And this was their lovely, caring, unique thing that they used to like to do. And with it would come a little message. The little message was, we're giving this to you because you're a fine Jewish child, and you should practice all the precepts of the Jewish people, that we're kind and caring to everyone, whether they're like us or they're not like us, to make sure and be kind and caring. That was a big value that they held, and they wanted everyone to treat each other well. And when they gave these little kids the $2 bills, that's what they would say. And very, very sad. Our condolences are to Dr. Shimi Blau, their son, and to all the rest of the family and the community on her loss. If we haven't already mentioned, we will mention upcoming soon as well, that in fact her son, one of her children, Dr. Shimi Blau, I mentioned, is actually engaged, which is a very lovely thing. We were waiting a long time for him to meet Mrs. Wright, and we have met her, and she's coming from California, very delightful. And God willing, that will move forward, although unfortunately compromised by by his mother's sad loss. Okay, I want to also add to our list of announcements our sponsor. We have a actually a kind of a mention, a sponsor mention, which I'm very excited about. And this is really a lovely story. So it turns out that one of my dear friends for many years, Dave Reynolds, who is an employee at CenturyLink and now called Lumen, Lumen. Actually, he seems to have his ship finally came in, won the lottery over there. And what happens is that this nice company does they take a certain amount of money, about $30,000 a year, and they donate it to nonprofits, to really beautiful causes. And the way they decide where the money is going to go is they do like a survey. They actually surveyed. It happens to be, listen to this, 2021 employees, 2021 employees, huh? Coincidence. Filled out the survey and said where they'd like the $30,000 to go, and they decided. They chose some great causes: Feeding America, Habitat for Humanity, Toys for Tots, etc. But in addition to that $30,000, they take another $1,000 and they select by lots, by drawing the lots. They do a lottery, and one of those surveyed employees gets to be the one to decide where another $1,000 of philanthropy will go from Lumen. And just so happens, I just learned today that Dave Reynolds won the lottery, and he not only did he win the lottery, but then he chose the Jewish Experience as the recipient of his $1,000. Isn't that great? Look at that! I see some from the studio audience joining us here today. Now, here's what I've got here. I've got a copy of the actually the Lumen corporate bulletin in which this announcement was announced. This was made, and I want to read it to you because it's very wonderful. It says, on top of the $30,000 donated, senior infrastructure engineer Dave Reynolds in Denver was randomly selected from the successful quiz participants to donate an additional $1,000, which he is donating to the Jewish Experience. And I quote, and he said, in this time of COVID, political divisiveness, and social upheaval, the Jewish Experience continues to share a message of inclusion and acceptance, Dave said. Their program, Clean Speech Colorado, focuses on positive interaction and sharing of values. I'm hoping this contribution will help TJE continue this valuable work. At Lumen, we live by the unifying principles which join seamlessly with the Clean Speech Colorado campaign. And isn't that amazing? I have to tell you, I'm very appreciative to the sponsor of the day. If anyone would like to be tomorrow's sponsor, let me know. We're very appreciative to Dave Reynolds and the whole Reynolds family. We miss you because we haven't seen you so much. I just want to mention Allegra Reynolds, Dave's wife, is the all-time best volunteer the Jewish Experience ever had, and we just haven't seen her much because of COVID-19, which is hard. And Meyer, one of our students, came through our Sunday school, and so may in the merit of your winning the lottery and donating the $1,000 tzedakah from the Lumen Company, directing it to the Jewish Experience, may all of you have good health and well-being, and continue to do this again and again. Love you guys. Thanks for joining us on the show, and thanks for that. We also today I want to introduce a new segment on the show today. We're going to call it the Daily Kvel. Okay, the Daily Kvel. Now, first I have to tell you what Kvel means if you're not otherwise intimately familiar. Kvel is a fabulous Jewish word, which really means to it's associated with the word nachas. And you have nachas is in part is the pleasure that you take about someone else's good fortune or success. We've talked about nachas. It was a feature in this year's Clean Speech Colorado campaign, Volume 2. We talked about nachas, and I mentioned at the time there in that lesson that there's no other real word like that. I looked around in any language. In fact, what I found out is that in German, they have the opposite word. There's actually one word in German which refers to the pleasure that you take in another's misfortune. Ouch. Okay, that's terrible. But in Hebrew and Judaism, we have a word, and no other language seems to have this word, which is a single word, which means to take pleasure in someone else's good fortune. And the verb there, what you do when you experience that feeling, is you kvel. Okay, this is this Yiddish word. Now, it's a kavel, which means to kind of like, where that just that joy and compliment should just ooze out of you, right? It just, the person just kvelling, like it glows off your face. So we're going to do a daily kvel. Okay, this is a great thing to have, right? As opposed to that other German segment, which we're not going to do. Anyway, the daily kvel today I want to share, which is I want to kvel about my dear friend Ari Kimmel. Why am I kvelling about Ari Kimmel? So for those of you who are with us on Live at 5 last week, at the end of the week, I mentioned that I was visited by a lovely group of young men over the last couple of days. It just left this morning. My son, my 12th grade son, Yaakov, came home from school for a few days, and he brought some of his friends home. 14 to be exact. So the 15 of us actually were in the house together for 4 days. It was amazing. I'm looking forward to getting some sleep and cleaning up the house. But they are the most amazing boys. We had an amazing time. There's actually very little to clean up because they insisted on putting the house back together and cleaning up. And this one of the 14 friends that came was a young man named Yitzchak Eisner, and Yitzchak has some family in Denver. He's from the East Coast, but he has some family here. He has the Kimmel family, and the Kimmels happen to be, I guess there's two. There's Jack and Ari, brothers, and they are his great uncles. So they. Really, I've known Jack and Ari for a long time, but I didn't recognize the connection. I found out about it earlier this year. So when Ari Kimmel heard that his great nephew Yitzchak was coming to Denver as part of the Ner Israel Denver ski extravaganza that we just put on for 3 days, he couldn't have been more happy. And he called me and he said, "What can I do to help? And can I, what do you need?" And he was just all around unbelievable, amazing. Let me tell you how amazing he was. He decided that I needed, and he was right. He intuited that I would need other people to drive. I mean, how are you going to get all these boys around and schlep them here and there? We took them skiing. We had to get them to and from the airport. And he said, "I will drive with you." And so twice in 2 days in a row, he was at my house before 6 a.m. And 6 a.m. or 6:15 in the morning, he's there with bells on, ready to do nothing other than drive these boys around because he just loved his great nephew, wanted to spend time and wanted to be helpful. He just adored him and with him and all his friends wanted to be helpful. He went up, spent the entire day with us at Loveland. He didn't even ski. He just sat in the car. He drove us there just as in the car. I mean, can you imagine? That's so nice. That's Mike Kvel. What an unbelievable guy. And what a nice thing to do. I'm kvelling from him. And this picture behind me, by the way, okay, this was taken yesterday at sunset. And we after a long day of skiing where he just sat in the car and who knows what. And then I said, "Okay, we're not going home yet. We're going higher. Instead of going down from the Loveland Ski Resort, we went further up. We drove up to the top of Loveland Pass, 12,000 feet. That's the Continental Divide. And we, as a group, we did the Mincha service. It was unbelievable. So we prayed the Mincha service. And these kids, they weren't rushing through it. I was shivering. My legs were knocking like this. And the kids are taking their time and it's with heart. And after that, we sang and danced and jumped around and Ari was taking pictures. And this picture is from that click. And you could see how enchanting. You can imagine how enchanting it was. And he was at that point I would have been like, "Come on, let's go. There's traffic." And he couldn't had a better nature and an easygoing smile. So here it is. He didn't want me to thank him anymore. Every one of those boys thanked him at least 60 times, and he had to stop them from thanking him. He got tired of being thanked. So I'm thanking him in absentia one more time. My daily kvel today is Ari. Unbelievable. Okay, next segment on the show. I want to move on to another. I'm introducing a lot of segments this week. We're really expanding. Not only we're on YouTube, I got another new segment for you. We're going to do Jewish Mythbusters because I've always felt that, that there's so many things that are just ill understood and people think, this or that. And it's just it's a myth, really. There's lots of them. And so one of the regular segments we're going to do is we're going to do Jewish Mythbusters. And today I've decided one of the most classic myths. I mean, it's not true, but we're going to talk it through. Is this one, which is that if you have, they say, people think, I've heard this all the time. People think that if you have a tattoo, you can't be buried in a Jewish cemetery. Okay, that is today's Jewish myth for the Jewish Mythbuster segment. It happens to be not true, but let's talk about it a little bit, and let's see if we can start to put it together a little bit and understand it. It is this myth possibly arose from the fact that that in general Jews don't get tattoos. It's interesting. It actually says later in the Torah that a person shouldn't do a permanent inking of their skin. So that sounds like a tattoo, right? I mean, that's a tattoo, a permanent inking of the skin. And that would include, like with a cutting, I mean, effectively a tattoo is cutting into the skin and putting ink in there, and then it stays, something like that. Very popular thing today, unfortunately. And but it's not a Jewish thing to do, and it actually does really says that right in the Torah. I actually had a young man call me a couple of years ago and said, "Rabbi, is it really true I can't get a tattoo?" I mean, he was really on the fence. And I said, "Listen, come down. Let me take you to lunch and let's go out and talk about it." I took him out. I took along with me a small copy of the Torah. And while we were over lunch, we talked about it, and I showed him the verse, and it's really, no pun intended, it's right there in green and white, And I showed him that the Torah does really say that you shouldn't get a tattoo. And he said, he accepted it. And we talked about alternatives. He wanted to do something very Jewish and artistic and personal. So that was why he had this idea. And we talked about it. Instead, he decided he was going to design and make a little, like a medallion that he could wear. Much better. I was very happy, very supportive of that idea. There was another lady who called me, and she said, I didn't know who she was. She said, called in. She said, "Rabbi, how do you say phoenix in Hebrew? How do you say phoenix in Hebrew?" I knew exactly why she wants to know how to say phoenix in Hebrew. Okay. So I said, "Come on in. Let's talk about it. Come on in. So she came in, very artistic, creative person. And of course, yes, she wanted to tattoo the word phoenix in Hebrew on herself. So that's why she was thinking, of course, as I imagined. So we talked about it. The phoenix is really not particularly a Jewish concept, Jewish thing there, although I think it may appear in some medrash or other, but anyway, we talked about it, and I don't know if I prevailed upon her or not, but I suggested that she consider something else, and maybe some other way to artistically represent that, which was very meaningful to her, but without doing a tattoo. Now, what is the Torah talking about that it says not to do this? What's the issue? Actually, the Torah there is talking about in the context of mourning. It actually says that one should not do this over a mace, a death in the family. If God forbid is a death in the family, it seems that it used to be considered somewhat normal. That in some cultures and societies, that in a person's painful sense of emotional loss, that they would literally it was almost like a self-mutilation. They would cut themselves. They would mark themselves in some manner of permanent loss. I don't know if there's any group that does that today, or there is such a thing today. I'm not aware. I don't know. It definitely doesn't sound like a very pleasant thing. But there was such an idea, and the Torah is saying not to do that. Now here, when we say not to do that, in part what the Torah is actually pointing out to us is that if God forbid there is a loss, there's meant to be mourning. A loss is a loss. It's bitter. It's difficult. It's painful. As we say, you shouldn't note from such things. We shouldn't have to experience loss like that. But there's also, interestingly, the Torah actually says, and there's an idea that one should not mourn overly much. There's meant to be a limit. There's a limit to mourning. There's a certain amount of time for various degrees of mourning, and over time that the levels of recognition of the loss should lessen. And a person is not meant to be in that state forever, ever afterwards, after a loss. And this idea of the Torah part is saying to not take the loss so far as to mutilate oneself. And there's a couple principles at work, and this is the first one, which is to not mourn overly much. If one would mourn overly much, to some degree, it's as if they are rejecting or just not in sync with the bigger picture. The bigger picture is that this life is not all there is. There's a world to come. There will be opportunities. We'll be reunited. That we go on to a better place, and that we go on to our ultimate reward. And these are ABCs of Judaism. In Maimonides, the 13 tenets of our faith. These are all a given, and this is, and so therefore, if we know all that, then that we miss our dear friends and relatives that pass. We miss them terribly. They're not in our world anymore. They're not in our lives anymore. And that is bitter and tragic and painful, and we should know from it. But they've gone on to a better place, and we will be reunited. And that is important. And if we mourn overly much, it's as if we get that wrong, and that's a problem. That's principle number one. And the Torah says, don't mutilate yourself in that, and that's mourning too far, taking the mourning and the loss too far. There's another principle at work here as well, which is just in general about the concept of self-mutilation, and this sort of broadens the topic of tattoos. It makes it a relevant and problematic, even if we're not talking about that situation of loss. And that is this: we are let's just call it, we have a limited ownership, a limited degree of ownership over our own lives and selves. That may sound like an odd concept. What does that mean? Like who do I have to split the deal with? Who's my part owner? Well, obviously you could get in trouble for lots of things, but who's really calling the shots? We are given our lives by the creator of the universe for a certain amount of time, and we have like this was more common in the sense back in the day where software was no longer like it came with your computer, but you had to like download it and get it. And then every time you did, you had to sign the EULA. The EULA is a way we say the EULA, that funny word EULA. Remember those? The EULAs you have to sign, the end user license agreement, right, Dave? So you know what those things. Now the end user license agreement is basically, that means if you want to use this software, this product, you have to agree to the terms. It doesn't, you can't do anything you want with it. We're going to give you our software, but you can't tamper with it, can't meddle with it. You have terms, and you have limited rights and privileges to it. We'll give it to you. It's yours to use. You bought it after all, but you didn't buy it without strings attached. There are limitations to your use. And in a sense, life is like that as well. God grants us life, and it's every opportunity, every moment is to be seized, enjoyed, to be cherished, and to be used as a cherished resource. But there are terms and there are limitations, and you're a limited end user. You're not, it's not anything at all that goes. And there are certain things that are outside of your purview. And one of them, for example, is a person is not allowed to take their own lives. The end of one's life, the end moment, the end. When does life come to an end? That's not something that we choose. We're not allowed to choose that moment, not allowed to end our lives. And as sort of think of it as an addendum to that, we're responsible to take care of our lives. The Torah says, you have to be careful to guard your life, protect your life, take good care. That means to eat your vegetables and whatever else the doctors tell you to eat, the nutrition tell you to eat, and do the exercise that like getting a walk. Walking is very good. You have to go for a walk. And that's very good exercise. You have to take care of your health and eat well and do those things that are considered to be healthy. That stuff may change over time. What they thought was healthy then is considered not healthy now, and vice versa. But whatever the best of the popular expert opinion is healthy, then you should steer in that direction. And unhealthy things, likewise, therefore, you have to avoid. Can't end one's own life or curtail it by doing unhealthy things. There was a time for a couple decades ago where cigarette smoking was initially, when it became a thing, it was considered to be healthy. There were those who prescribed it. It was healthy. I guess it was calm the nerves and it was relaxing. And they used to give them to the soldiers because that was good for them, keep them well and calm, so they'd be good, make good soldiers. They thought healthy was the smoking was healthy. Now they don't think it's so healthy anymore. So now we all stopped smoking. And although we started vaping, but all right, putting vaping aside, so smoking is considered bad. One time I remember reading that there was a tshuva. There was a question asked of the great Rabbi Rav Moshe Feinstein Zatzal, of blessed memory, and they asked him, can a Jew smoke? And if he's a smoker, does he have to stop? So very interesting. At the time, Rabbi Rav Feinstein ruled that being that predominant prevailing medical opinion is that it's bad for one's health, you shouldn't start smoking. If you're already a smoker, it's very, very hard. It's addictive and it's very hard to stop. He didn't say, you have to stop. Then I have this big challenge. Am I going to be able to stop? Whatever. He didn't say you have to stop this instant. But for sure one shouldn't start. Reminds me of a little joke they used to say. They used to say, all of that medical research about how bad smoking is for you, that doesn't apply to us anyway, because all that research was done on people who smoke 7 days a week, and we only smoke 6 days a week. So it just wasn't relevant. Anyway, but that's more of a joke. Now, the reason I bring it up is, again, you have to take care of your health. And one of the things that's outside your end user license agreement for having a body for 120 years, God willing, we should live well for 120. But that end user license agreement that includes that you're not allowed to get a tattoo, because that's what it says in the Torah. So we don't do tattoos. But the myth, and today's Mythbuster is about, does that mean you can't be buried in a Jewish cemetery? And the answer is, it does not mean that. There is no problem with a person who didn't either know about or didn't care to observe that restriction and got a tattoo. Either way, having a tattoo does not preclude you from being buried properly with Jewish burial in the Jewish cemetery like everybody else's. Does not preclude you from that at all. I think it must be, my sense is that this was what they call a Bubba Maisa, which means a story you heard from your Bubby. And she told that because she did not want you to get a tattoo. She said, if you get a tattoo, they won't bury you in the Jewish cemetery. And so that was her big way of discouraging it, but it's not true. And it's not a problem it's a problem, but one shouldn't do it. If you don't have any yet, don't get any. Like smoking, if you already have one, you don't have to get rid of it. But if you don't have one, don't get one. And after 120, they won't keep you out of the Jewish cemetery. Folks, that's our show for today. It's been great. I hope you'll if you haven't already done so and you're watching us on YouTube, like our YouTube channel, the Jewish Experience YouTube channel, so we can keep bringing you great stuff. If you haven't become our Facebook friend, if you're watching us on Facebook, like us there. If you really want to enjoy the show, join us live at every day from Monday to Thursday on 694348847. Did I get that wrong? Forget it. I said at the beginning of the show. You know what the number is. And we'll see you tomorrow. Have a healthy day. Have a holy day. Thanks for joining us on Live at 5.